And I am representing our leadership team in Highland Park. I am the Voters Service Chair, and I'm chairman of this candidate forum. I want to thank the members of my committee in this forum, and I think you can still hear me, for their dedication to the process that League has had in wanting to educate and enlighten our community. You might know that we appreciate also the libraries lending us the webcam and the tripod. And so we want to thank them about it. You learn more, if you want to learn more about the candidates today, please go to our website. You can see the most wonderful, beautiful, detailed voters guide where the candidates answer additional questions. And that voters guide was put together by Nancy Goldberg over here, who is the president of the League of Women Voters now, and also is our virtual host today for the program. So you see another example of dedication that we have for people who love League. This year, our League is celebrating, believe it or not, our 95th anniversary in Highland Park. And some of you may have come to our 75th celebration, our 85th celebration, our 90th, and here we are at 95. A few years ago, we, thank your applause. You might know that a few years ago, we incorporated Highwood into our league. So it's called the League of Women Voters of Highland Park Highwood. And we were very happy to have our first performance by them here. I want to tell you that after you turn off your cell phone, we'd like you not to boo. You will not be that kind of audience. We're going to boo or clap or say yeah or something like that, because I see a large group here and we want to answer as many questions as possible so that we can keep going. If you have a question and you would like to have a question, raise your hand, please, and someone will come over and give you one of the 3x5 cards and a pencil, and then, raise your hand again when your question is ready. All questions to be asked are to be put on this 3x5 card. That's, kind of like league protocol. You know that the League of Women Voters is grassroots, nonpartisan. We don't oppose a candidate. We don't support a candidate. But what we do is, if an issue is brought to our membership and we decide to study it, we come up with the facts, and we might go to consensus. If there is a consensus, then we can take a position and advocate for it. We hope that you will think about supporting us if you're not a supporter. It doesn't have to be exactly with money, which would really be very nice, but it could be for a little bit of time or a lot of time, or some volunteering. We hope that you will join us. So in keeping with our idea of nonpartisanship, the League always asks for a trained moderator, and we are very fortunate today to have trained moderator Paula Lawson, who is very experienced. And I just want to share her bio with you because I think it's very impressive and another example of dedication of people to the League of Women Voters. Paula Lawson is a member of the League of Women Voters of Glencoe, who resides in Glencoe. She's a past president of the League of Women Voters of Illinois and the LWV of Glencoe. Paula has served on the LWVIL Issues Committee and is an issues specialist in the area of redistricting. She has moderated forums for the U.S. Congress, congressional districts, and local village and community boards. It was her interest in public policy and educating the public about government that led to her volunteer work for the League. Would you join me, please, in welcoming? Spending a lot of time with us today.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for your introduction. Good afternoon. I'm Paula Lawson, your moderator for the forum for candidates for City of Highland Park Council member in the April 4th consolidated election. This forum is being recorded and will be posted for viewing on the League of Women Voters of Highland Park Highwood website, social media pages, and on the League of Women Voters of Illinois voter guide. The candidates for City of Highland Park Council member are Anthony Bloomberg, Jeffrey Hubler, Yumi Ross, Adam Stolberg, and Kelly Nichols. I'd like to review the rules for the forum at this time. Each candidate's opening statement is limited to 2 minutes. Candidates will offer opening statements in the order in which they appear on the ballot. Mr. Bloomberg, Mr. Hubler, Ms. Ross, Mr. Stolberg, and last, Ms. Nichols. Candidates will be given 1.5 minutes to respond to questions posed by the moderator. The order of answering questions will be altered, and Mr. Hubler will give the first response to the first question, followed by Ms. Ross for the first response to the second question, and so on. Each candidate is allowed 1 minute for closing statements, which will be presented in reverse order of the opening statements. The League is providing timekeepers who will show candidates the remaining time for each statement or question. The time cards will show 30 seconds and stop. No visual aids are allowed during the forum. Candidates will restrict themselves to answering questions posed by the moderator. Exchanges between candidates will be ruled out of order. Unused time may not be carried over to later questions or statements. Audience questions will be written on index cards. You can raise your hand if you would like a card, and ushers will pick them up. Questions are to be directed to all candidates, not to an individual candidate. The League and moderator reserve the right to review, edit, and reword questions for clarity, appropriateness, time, and to avoid duplication. The moderator shall make all final decisions as to the questions asked. Now we're ready for our opening statements, which are 2 minutes in length. And I'd like Mr. Bloomberg to begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League for hosting this. This is the 3rd time I've participated in this. Why am I running? Well, I didn't actually expect to be here at all. In fact, after my last campaign, I cleaned out my campaign coffers and donated the money to the Highland Park Community Nursery School. But after the tragedy this past summer, I met with friends, colleagues, the mayor, and my constituents who convinced me that it was important to maintain consistency, continuity, and stability to the city going forward from this event. That's why I'm running. Continuity is important because we know we are headed for difficult times, even though we would like to be past this. We know this definitively from the Justice Department, who has given us some idea of what we can expect and also prepared us for the fact that there are unknowns ahead. Having served the community on the city council for 3 terms, I'm already ready to go in terms of what needs to be done to steer the city through these difficult issues. We also know this from what we've learned from other communities that have been through similar events who have shared their experiences with us. My experience began in politics in Highland Park as an individual resident. When I returned here with my wife, who was originally from the Ravinia area, we raised our children here and discovered that there was going to be a change in the school districting, and I participated in that. I participated in the Renaissance Place development, and then got appointed to the Plan Commission. So I've also served in an appointed role and finally elected to the City Council. In serving for the City Council, I have led Highland Park along with Mayor Rotary and my fellow council members through a number of complex issues in a civilized, thoughtful manner. And I present that kind of stability that I think will be important on all subjects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoover, your opening statement?
First of all, thank you to the league for putting this on. Thank you to all the candidates up here. I personally know this is a lot of work to do this. But most of all, thank you for everybody here coming to listen to us, to get educated on who each one of us are. Along those lines, I'm Jeff Hubler. I'm the owner of Ravinia Brewing Company, BWB Shakes, and I also own my own real estate brokerage in Highland Park. And I love raising my family here in Highland Park. I have 3 kids that go to the schools, elementary school, middle school, and high schooler finally, which is interesting. I think it's important when comparing all of our candidates to look at the backgrounds. What's unique about each one of us? And what can each of us bring to the city council? I know as a small business, I'm known as a small business leader in this community. But I grew up in Nebraska, so I have a much different backstory than a lot of people. I worked really hard as a kid. You know, I got a beep. I had many jobs. I was. Okay, so anyway, before I turned 16, I held many jobs. I worked in cornfields, I walked beans, I painted houses, I did all that. I got a full tuition scholarship to the University of Nebraska, and I got a degree in mechanical engineering, which actually brought me to Illinois. That then moved me to Chicago, and I met my lovely wife, Athena, who is here, and we had a couple kids in Chicago. And we decided it wasn't the right place for us, and we started looking and found Highland Park, and that's why we moved here. And along this journey, I've met a lot of amazing people, but this has only made me appreciate Highland Park even more. I think the city government has done a good job in 3 of the 4 pillars that they focus on: infrastructure, public safety, and finance. However, the 4th pillar, vibrancy, is lacking. It's kind of a catch-all bucket, and there's 3 things in particular in there I will focus on. That is business and economic development, especially in the downtown area, inclusion, and the environment. I look forward to sharing details on how I would propose to improve these areas as the afternoon goes on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ross, your opening statement?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yumi Ross. Thank you to the League for your great work on voter education. I'm a 25-year resident of Highland Park, married to a 3rd-generation Highland Parker, and we raised our twins here. I'm a Harvard-trained architect who majored in growth and structure of cities, urban design in college. I bring a broad and own a small business, co-own it. I bring a broad, very long, and very deep record of service throughout our city. I served 2 terms on District 112 School Board. After my service on District 112, I continued to serve 112 on its foundation, and then the board of District 113 Education Foundation entrusted me with the presidency. And now I'm board president of the Arts Center, Highland Park. I bring a unique understanding of scale and appropriateness of projects to sites. The city spends many millions of dollars on infrastructure and building developments, and I think it is so important to have a design eye on them. I am likewise passionate about revitalizing our city's businesses. We must support our existing businesses and make it easier, faster, and less expensive to open and stay open. We have great assets, beautiful lakefront and parks, strong schools, and we're the only North Shore city with 2 top art organizations. We must utilize every asset, including the arts, to become the destination city of the North Shore again. There's much work to do for our city, and I have the relationships with all sister governments to bring everyone together to get work done. The city's governmental entities are currently too siloed, but we are in the same boat. We are one city. We can do it. We can do it. And I have the contacts and knowledge to help. I am a new voice, and I have the experience to bring needed change. I am the product of a dual language family, and I believe in the great diversity. I believe in the great value of diversity and different cultures. We need diversity in all its forms: diversity of residents, income levels, of kinds of retail stores, and diversity of thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just supposed to remind the candidates to speak as loudly as they can. And Mr. Stolberg, your opening statement.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? I would like to thank the league and all of my fellow candidates for joining here today. My name is Adam Stolberg. I've lived in Highland Park since 1979. My wife Samantha and my 3 kids, actually 2, are here today. We lost one to the Ohio State University. Our city has 4 core priorities: public safety, infrastructure investment, fiscal responsibility, and community vibrancy. Over the last 6 years, I've worked hard to keep these priorities in focus while working collaboratively with all fellow stakeholders. While my challengers here will tell you what they plan to do, I'd like to focus on what I've done. Highland Park has maintained a balanced budget and a AAA bond rating. We have developed a 10-year capital improvement plan that has invested over $55 million since 2020 and plans to invest another $140 million in our age infrastructure, including $25 million this year alone. Some key projects will include a new fire station in Ravinia and a new senior center. I have championed responsible development, leading efforts to eliminate the POSO, allowing us to fill 2 large, long-standing vacancies on Central Avenue. I have fostered collaboration between hundreds of residents, developers, and city staff on a variety of projects that have made them better, safer, and more neighborhood friendly. My creative thinking and real estate experience and background has brought in millions of dollars in the sale of the senior center and the sale of air rights of a parking lot on 2nd Street. As a liaison to the Plan and Design Commission and an affordable housing advocate, I helped our Affordable Housing Trust Fund collect over $1.25 million in the last 3 years. While we are not there yet, our retail vacancy rate in the Central Business District is down substantially. However, we can and I will do more. We must continue to offer incentives not only to attract new businesses, but also keep our existing businesses thriving. All the years I sat on the dais, I never imagined a moment of silence for Highland Park. While so many are trying to heal, our city must and will continue to provide resources to those in physical and emotional need for many years to come. I believe I've been a responsible, accessible, and collaborative voice on your city council, and I respectfully ask for your vote on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Nichols, your statement?
I wanted to thank the league for hosting this forum. Educating voters, especially in local elections, is critical, and you always do an amazing job. First, the basics about me. I've lived in Highland Park for 10 years. I'm married to a handsome Australian man, and I have 11-year-old 5th grade twins that are in the dual language program at Oak Terrace. I have a vision for a thriving, safe Highland Park that families like yours, businesses, and visitors are excited to be a part of. How am I going to do it? Same way I do everything, by showing up and solving problems. How did I start doing this work, and how did I learn I was good at it? I showed up. I came into the world of policy and advocacy as a passionate mom who was panicked about climate change and wanted to make a difference. I showed up so much, I was offered a job and then a career. And now almost a decade later, I'm the senior manager of policy and advocacy with the Respiratory Health Association in Chicago. I want to make Highland Park even better than it is. I want it to be a place our kids want to come back to and that people can't wait to spend time in. With my experience, I know it's not just the city government that can do that, but because of my knowledge of how things work, I know what parts the city can do and what parts other governments have to help with. If you have a concern that the city can address, you can come to me. I am smart, capable, and I'm focused on finding the right person or right solution to a problem. That helped me start my first business, Two Ladies and a Ladder, a handy woman business. And I've always, when I work on something, whether it's a house or a kid's Halloween costume or an advocacy campaign, I work until the problem is solved. We want a vibrant, safe, inclusive community. There is a disconnect between what we want and what is happening, and I can bring the visions of the city and its citizens together. I have new perspectives and fresh ideas, as well as an extensive amount of experience in policy, advocacy, community building, and engagement to make them happen. I hope that I can count on your vote this election. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to the questions. Candidates have a minute and a half to answer. The first question will go to Mr. Hubler. And it is, if elected, would you approach municipal decision-making through a sustainability lens?
Thank you for the question. I believe Highland Park needs to look at everything, like all communities, through a sustainability lens. But it's not just looking at it through a sustainability lens. We need to be looking at it from a strategic plan lens. We need to be thinking, where do we need to get to? The biggest environmental problem facing our world is global warming and climate change, and Highland Park needs to be a leader in fighting this. If elected, I will push the city to set a strategic goal for Highland Park to be carbon neutral by 2035. Once this goal is set, it becomes an engineering problem. We need to figure out how to work backwards, so each year we can set the proper goals to get to that final goal. Just looking at something through a lens doesn't get you to that big goal. The state of Illinois is going to do this for us one way or the other. I think the goal right now is 2045. We can do better, and we need to do better for our kids and our families. Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Ross, about approaching decision-making through a sustainability lens.
Thank you. I want to start by saying that I have a proven track record of advocacy around environmental causes. I worked on the Cool Globes Global Warming Awareness Project. I helped create a green middle school curriculum for the Chicago Public Schools, and I presented our work as a featured speaker at the United Nations. Before I joined District 112 School Board, I helped create the 5-year strategic plan for the district, where I pushed really, really hard for environmental sustainability to be a strategy, and ultimately it was added. District 112 has saved over $1 million through energy conservation. I served on a city, as a 112 school board member, I served on the city's Green Alliance, representing 112 along with the library, hospital, 113, and the city, sharing best practices. Our architecture firm, Ross Architecture, won Chicago's Affordable Green Home Competition 20 years ago, long before the industry actively practiced green building. And our own house has a full array of solar panels. We walk the walk. The city is already doing a good job environmentally. It has a sustainability plan, a climate hazard assessment, the bike walk plan that works with transportation. And I agree with the city's efforts to see through things through a green lens. With all due respect, I do believe the lens is important. It's what we learned certainly in architecture, to look at every decision, through a green lens. And if we practice good urban design along with this lens, involving the community, the natural outcome will be sustainability that everyone will support. And I would work towards increasing community education and awareness of sustainable practices. The city has joined with other city governments to aggregate electric pricing so that everyone gets the lowest common bill. I support this kind of collaboration. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Stolberg, your response?
Would you mind just repeating the question so I can make sure?
Sure. If elected, would you approach municipal decision-making through a sustainability lens?
Thank you. I think we already do. Speaking from my role on city council as liaison to the Plan and Design Commission, our city code, and specifically chapter 150, addresses what we expect new developers and developments to bring to Highland Park. Over the last several years, I have brought new changes to that code, which include bird-friendly glass, green roofs, dark sky compliant lighting, and recognizing not only how we can achieve these, but not putting burdens on developers or individual homeowners to get there too quickly. We've incorporated many things, starting at our lead by example in some of our municipal buildings, trickling down to our developers and ultimately to our single family homeowners. I think that we look, whenever possible, purchasing municipal vehicles, whether it's for our city staff, our fire or police. We look to green options, whether it's hybrid or at some point full electric vehicles. And I think we could always do more. So I am absolutely supportive of those green initiatives. I think it starts from a top-down approach. I think as a city, we are already there in terms of our commitment to doing so. I think we can always continue to do more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Nichols, about approaching municipal decision-making through a sustainability lens.
I approach my entire life through a sustainability lens. So yes, everything I look at is through a sustainability lens. Those of you who are here might not know, I am the chair of the Sustainability Advisory Group for the City of Highland Park. We are the ones that wrote the sustainability plan for the City of Highland Park, and we've suggested options to the City Council when they consider the options that we have on the table, like Adam listed. We work on it, talk about it at every meeting, and I'm excited about running because if I'm elected, I'll be able to work on putting some of those suggested policies into practice, right? Climate change is coming, whether we like it or not. It is my area of expertise. I would argue that I know more about this issue personally than anyone else on the panel. I'm the person that people call with questions about climate change and climate change policy. Because of that, I know that action must be taken immediately and decisively to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. Climate change impacts health. It also impacts infrastructure. It impacts the amount of money we spend on things at our own house and in city government. And it's critical to look at things through the eyes of energy efficiency, federal programs that are available to us to decrease the amount the city spends on climate problems that can arise, and making sure that we're prepared for the worst of climate change, which for us looks a lot like flooding, heat, drought, and vector-borne illnesses. We've had a very mild winter. There's going to be a lot of ticks this summer. So we know what we've got to do, and we can do it. I'm going to use all the knowledge that I have to fight against climate change and work towards sustainability consistently in Highland Park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bloomberg?
Thank you. Like Councilmember Stolberg, I have participated in actions by the city council under the heading of sustainability. That includes the banning of the use of coal tar-based driveway sealants in Highland Park, the dark skies lighting code, bird-friendly glass, and importantly, on my own, I'm a member of the leaf blower working group, which is a group of all of the surrounding suburbs that has been investigating the impact that leaf blowers and landscaping equipment have on our environment, which goes well beyond just the sound issue, but also the particulates that get blown up in the air and other adverse impacts that they have. Another area where this is going to impact our decision is actually another issue that I'm sure we're going to be asked about today, which is the proposed bike lanes on Green Bay Road, which carries a sustainability issue with it. It's very important. It has to be weighed along with all of the other issues. Those are matters that I've already faced on the city council. My decisions, I think, have contributed to Highland Park being a leader in these areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the audience to turn off your cell phones if you haven't done that already, please. Okay, this next question will go to Ms. Russ first. And I'd like to acknowledge that there have been a lot of questions about revitalizing the downtown business district. This question is, what are your suggestions for the central business district in reconciling new residential construction with keeping the longtime character and charm of the city? And what are your suggestions for revitalizing the downtown business district?
Thank you. And I wanted to say, actually, it's going to take a second of my time here, that I stand on principle, but I'm all about collegiality. And I meant no disrespect in saying that I do see things through a green lens, and I'm glad that the city does too. We need to support local businesses. And I do feel that we need to look at the whole process of opening a business from A to Z to make it faster, easier, cheaper to open. Retail is really hard to do in this world economy. And I think we need to make retail entertainment, which is why I think we could collaborate with our arts organizations as much as possible. I'd love to market Highland Park and show off our city to the world. We are the only North Shore city with 2 renowned art organizations. We have strong schools, beautiful lakes, beautiful lake parks, public transportation. We need to go out proactively to seek new businesses, but not at the expense of existing ones. And I want to say we're too siloed as well. I'd like to see everybody working together. And we need to balance certainly the apartment building development. We do need feet on the ground. It has does contribute to vibrancy here, but it needs to be balanced along with everything else. We need a holistic approach to urban design, which is what I hope to bring.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stolberg. What are your suggestions for the central business district in reconciling new residential construction in keeping with the charm of the city?
The city is charming, absolutely, but if we want to be a city of the future, we have to balance the charm versus the reality that the retail world has changed. I think we have done a good job. We've changed our code to allow for more but appropriate density in the central business district. I see we're seeing that as some of these developments come on board, and as Yumi said, feet on the street. I want to also make it clear that we have 8 business districts in Highland Park. It's not just all about the central business district. Everybody needs our help and we have to be committed to all of that. When we had a new development come on board, they proposed adding almost 7,000 feet of retail space on the ground floor. I worked with them and helped to convince them to turn that retail space into walk-up townhomes. One way we don't hurt our existing businesses is by carefully addressing how much more retail space we put into downtown Highland Park while we're still trying to lease what we have. I think another way is to work very hard with our existing business owners and have a how can we help you attitude. One way to not add vacancy is to make sure the businesses that are here continue to thrive. Going forward, attracting new businesses in today's retail environment is challenging. We have a sales tax rebate for local businesses. Currently, that is for businesses that generate more than $1 million. At the last council meeting, I proposed that we brought it down to some of these smaller businesses that truly need this money and would be much more impacting. So I think we need to not only focus on bringing in new business, but I think we need to make a very strong effort on how we can help those business owners who are already here, have been a part of Highland Park for many, many years, or just
All right.
a brief amount of time.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Ms. Nichols, your response.
I have not knocked on a door in the city during this campaign and not had someone ask me about the Central Business District or Roger Williams for Highland Park. It is a common problem that everyone is talking about. And in fact, I actually went to the city council meeting last week and heard Adam and Tony and all the other council members talking about the things that the city does have in place to work on improving, all like Adam said, all of the business districts in Highland Park. I learned at that meeting that there are over 800 businesses in Highland Park, and there's been increases in businesses in the last year, but we can always do more, right? I learned that the city's done extensive research on whether or not they can impose penalties on property owners that are having long-term vacancies, which unfortunately the answer is no. The city's rezoned a bunch of areas, again, feet on the street, like Yumi and Adam talked about. And also one thing that made me really excited is that they have expanded allowable uses in the business district to attract different types of businesses to occupy those vacant spaces. I think that that's a really great option to make things revitalized in all of the business districts we have, but especially in the central business district. A viable solution, though, has to be within the budget of the city, right? It has to be something that is an agreement for the people that live here. And I've been talking to business owners, property owners, tax experts, and planning professionals, and all of them have disparate views on how to solve this problem. So it's very clear to me that there needs to be more transparency, more streamlining with permitting, and more flexible allowance uses. And like Adam said, nurturing businesses that are already here and seeing why they're staying and what makes them excited to be here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bloomberg, what are your suggestions for the business district in reconciling new construction and keeping the character and charm of the city?
The question of revitalization is usually asked independently of the issue of character. I lived in Highland Park. I called Highland Park home for 60 years. I moved here when I was 4 with my parents. I have seen the change in the character of Highland Park. It was most, in my opinion, impacted by the development of Renaissance Place, which added significant amounts of retail space to our city. At that time, the principal concern was, how are we going to keep up with that? Supposedly, we were going to create a situation where more people would come into town from outside of Highland Park. That didn't work, but the character of our city has been adversely, in my opinion, affected by that. And the choice that we have made, which I have supported, is the increase of residential density around our business districts. And this has worked, along with a lifting of some of the restrictions of uses. Our vacancy rate has dropped almost by half, as we learned at the last city council meeting. So these measures have been effective, but they have had an impact on the character of our city. The question going forward is, can we maintain sustainability as we address commercial issues? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hoopler?
So I am a small business owner, and I was at the city council meeting last Monday, and several of the city council members asked the question to the staff. Have you spoken to the small businesses? Have you talked to them? Have you asked them what they could do? And there was silence. That says something. We need experienced And we need more input from the small businesses. We need a strategic plan, much like a small business would have a strategic plan. I've outlined 3 things throughout my campaign that I would do. And it starts by just reallocating some resources. Right now, there's one person who runs the Business and Development Economic Office. And we need more. We need more help there. We need somebody assigned to recruit businesses and help businesses open. That's a long and difficult process. It's going to take talking to a lot of people, talking to commercial real estate brokers, talking to successful small businesses that we would like to have here. Number 2, we have to have a proactive feedback loop with our current businesses. What is working? Go talk to them. Every quarter, we should talk to every business. There's a lot of businesses here. One person can't do all that. And maybe it can be part of the BDAG group. There's other people who are willing to help. And number 3, to add vibrancy, you need to do more things. You need to have more events. The Food Truck Festival has brought extreme vibrancy to the Ravinia Business District. Last summer, we tried to start the lot, and unfortunately, the city has made a decision to severely cut that back because it wasn't as successful as they had hoped. And we can't be doing things like that. We need more vibrancy.
Okay, thank you. This is kind of in the same vein, but a little different question. We'll start with Mr. Stolberg. Please express your thoughts on Highland Park's master plan, how it reflects the current community needs, and how it may or may not chart our future.
Well, I think the master plan, the key to it is it has to live and breathe. We spend a lot of money with consultants to try and put a master plan together. We've been following that master plan. As I said earlier, we created from a B4 zoning district to a B44, B45, which added density to our downtown. We try and continue to follow that master plan, and it's not just about downtown businesses, whether it's about connectivity, fostering and promoting the assemblage of properties, removing dilapidated, old, I hate to say useless, but properties that would do better as we assemble them and create options that would be friendly and useful to the residents of Highland Park. I think that master plan is working. It takes time to evolve. It takes time to come to fruition. And throughout all of that, there are things that change over time. So we need to, as I said, we need to make sure that plan lives and breathes and that we have the flexibility to adapt to it as our world changes. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Nichols on the Highland Park master plan.
Not to repeat Adam, but I think the master plan is a great one. I'm excited that we're working on it and I'm excited that we're moving forward. But also, like Adam pointed out, and like I know from working in policy and advocacy at every level of government, city government can't exist in a vacuum, right? Everything that happens has to be informed by other things that are going to happen, right? Like sustainability issues. If something happens like we all lived through last summer, if things happen, we need to be ready to pivot and find a new approach and figure out how to look at things differently if we're asked to look at them differently through another lens, right? There's constantly money that is coming through the Inflation Reduction Act into local areas to be able to flush out some of the things that we feel like we're lacking in Highland Park. There's also a lot of work that needs to be done to pivot when we know more and we can do better, right? One of the things that came up in the conversations that I've been having with business owners too, and property owners are different than business owners, is that the responsibility also to fill empty storefronts has to do with the interests of property owners in Highland Park too. They have to be invested in the plan that we all are working from as well. And we all have to have a level of flexibility when we think about implementation, right? So it's something that I think is a great working document, and I think it has to evolve as we evolve, and it has to evolve in the space of the world that we live in as we live in it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bloomberg, your thoughts on the Highland Park master plan?
The issue of the master plan is not an issue that is solely related to the business and economic downtown areas of Highland Park. It also affects our neighborhoods. It has to do with sustainability. It has to do with our capital expenditures over a period of 10 to 15 years. This is a good example of what experience is important in how you choose who is going to represent you on the city council. There's no one immediate answer, and there's no single kind of experience that you can have to be able to address whether the master plan is working. So as an example, when a program doesn't work to attract people into the downtown, you have to be flexible enough, you have to listen to your fellow council members and decide we should try something else. The master plan is a public document that had the input of the entire community. It is a living, breathing document, as has been said. It has been generally successful and allowed us to move forward in the right direction to address all of the other issues that we've been talking about today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoopler?
The master plan in general is what you need. You need strategic planning. I've said that a couple times so far, and as a business owner, that's the direction you need to go. So the idea and the concept is there, and it does need to be a living document. I think the city right now needs to focus on a couple areas, and the focus just isn't there. And it's bringing in new businesses and having things for our children to do, to come back, to want to come back to Highland Park, to bring other people into Highland Park. We need to focus on actually having vibrancy in this town. We need to focus on bringing in the small businesses that we want. We need experiential places. You know, the data is out there. You know, we've talked about supposedly a lot more people renting or a lot more businesses that are coming in. You know, the city publishes the sales tax trends. You know, things have changed. Apparel sales are down 60% over the last 10 years, and that doesn't even account for inflation. Drinking and eating places, sales are down 7% over 10 years. Plus you have the 20% in inflation. Things are not getting better. We can't just sit back and say this is not a problem and we've filled the stores. They're coming. Just wait a little bit longer. We need leadership from that standpoint to bring big businesses into our town.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Ross, and please remember to speak as loudly as you can.
Thank you. I'm glad that the master plan, to hear it described as a living, breathing document. I agree that this needs to be an evolving document. And I have my own term for master plans. I call them urban design plans. My whole platform is about how we can't fully solve Highland Park's vibrancy issues or any of its issues by addressing one piece of the pie at a time. We need to look at the whole picture. So retail is struggling. We need to support existing businesses as we really need to support existing businesses as we proactively market and seek new businesses in conjunction with landlords and brokers. We need everybody at the table for this. We need to look at the cost of doing business here, simplify, and again, as I keep saying, leverage our assets. We have so many great assets here, including public education that's right there to bring people here to work as well as take them to jobs elsewhere. To my point about a holistic approach, this work to help retail needs to go hand in hand with how we invest in our streetscapes as part of an integrated urban design plan and infrastructure. And I want to say about infrastructure planning that it should be discussed with early neighborhood input, in my opinion, before plans are set in motion. I'll advocate for better processes and communication with the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go on to a totally different topic. And we'll start with Ms. Nichols. Can you describe your commitment to advancing racial equity? Please provide a concrete example which can relate to, for example, housing policy, zoning, fees, or criminal justice.
So we all want to live in an exceptional community, and diversity is what makes an exceptional community. And I know that Highland Park takes pride in its work that it's done to be a diverse and welcoming community that stands together against hate, and I share those values. I'm excited by organizations and the work they're doing, like CPA, Community Partners for Affordable Housing, who've worked to make housing in Highland Park accessible, adaptable, and available for people to come or remain in the community and create the generational wealth that can come from being a homeowner. I'm very excited about that. through the lens of accessibility of people that want to come into Highland Park and make our community and our business world more diverse. For professional training that I've received on anti-racism and internal bias work I've done on my own, I understand the systems of oppression and I continually fight against them in all my work. And I live my values in work and life, and any of the work that I would do on city council would be done through the framework of inclusion and diversity and equity in the community. My small business was created to help teach people who are typically left out of the home improvement space. And we bring in all kinds of people that can develop sustainability and ability to stand on their own and create their own business. And that's a small reflection of the kind of work that I want to see us doing when we develop places in Highland Park where people have access and we include people that aren't typically included in conversations here. I will continue to bring my personal ethos to City Hall and be certain that Highland Park can create the equitable, diverse, and just community that we need here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bloomberg. Can you describe your commitment to advancing racial equity?
My interest in racial equity was started in the course of my opposition, interestingly, again, to Renaissance Place. Renaissance Place displaced about 4 single-family homes that were each housing multiple families of various racial backgrounds. No provision was made for the displacement of those people. I was approached following my comments about that by the Interfaith Housing Commission of the North Shore and became a member of their board. I currently serve as the liaison to the Housing Commission. Housing is the inflection point where this city has an opportunity to positively affect racial diversity. The commission, as it happens, is currently examining the preference and priority of its waiting list to assure that and to rejigger it as to expanding beyond a means merely to allow residents to stay in Highland Park and live here to be more racially equitable and diverse. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Hooper, your response to your commitment to advancing racial equity.
In a diverse community like ours, we need to ensure all the citizens feel like they're heard, not just the ones who know somebody. Everybody needs to be heard and respected and represented. This isn't just the traditional protected groups, it's all groups of all backgrounds. They need to be heard and represented. So when community members speak out, we need to listen to them. If the majority are against something, we at the city council need to listen, even if we disagree, or even if we're not part of that same group. This is not only how we treat one another, but it's ensuring all our systems in the city and structures and processes are equitable. Are there technology or language barriers for some groups? Are there fees that are burdensome? Do we make give everybody equitable guidance on how to navigate the bureaucracy? Are some people just told exactly how to go over here and make that happen? We are caring and progressive city when it comes to inclusion, as exemplified by our nation-leading inclusion housing code, or how the city took into account the many different cultural and language needs after last summer's tragedy. But there is still much more we can do to ensure we fully live up to our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ross, your response?
Racism is an issue I care deeply about and have experienced personally as an Asian American. And I am currently serving on a committee tackling racism for actually in Chicago for the Museum of Contemporary Art. Not that there's racism there, but how can we avoid racism there? As board president of the Art Center of Highland Park, I've brought people of color onto the board, and I have done that for literally every board I serve on in Highland Park. We need people of different color to have seats at the table of decision making. I firmly believe that. And we also, to everyone's points about affordable housing, we need a diversity of residents in our city. You know, what people of color, teachers, firemen, nurses, young people, they should be able to live in Highland Park and build a life here. And that diversity of people adds to our vibrancy. And regarding affordable housing, I don't think it should be a static program. It needs to keep evolving. But racism is something that I actively work on all the time. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Stolberg, describe your commitment to advancing racial equity.
So in going last, I could be easy and just say I agree with so much of what's been said here. My role on council has been primarily involved in business and real estate. I think we have as one of my colleagues said, a nationwide leading inclusionary housing program. We can and we need to do more. It is great when developers build on site. I have been a proponent, even disagreeing with some of my council colleagues on the need also for scattered site housing and the money that goes into our Affordable Housing Trust Fund to provide that. Not every family in need can survive easily or possibly in a 2-bedroom condominium. It just doesn't work. So in terms of being inclusive and offering something for everybody in need, we need to always be looking at multiple options that will serve all the residents of Highland Park. The shooting on July 4th has brought some change to the way we operate a little bit as a council in terms of translation in some of our meetings, in terms of offering different methodology for people to participate. But one thing that I would like to say that no one has mentioned is one of our core priorities of public safety. And that starts with our police department. Chief Lou Jogman has created a culture in Highland Park in the short time he has been here that is unlike anything I've ever seen. Everybody is buying into his system. He moved here to be a resident. He is out with his wife and his family in our community all the time. And in a world where people are screaming defund police, we are lucky. We are so lucky that we have a leader like that who is creating such a culture in Highland Park that people do feel welcome, do not feel persecuted against, and do not feel like there's racial issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Bloomberg. How would you take into account our young people of Highland Park, Highwood?
Well, for one thing,
Louder.
I'm sorry, for one thing, I would like to see, with no offense to the people in this room, younger people attending events like this. We often hear, and I hear this from my daughter, who until very recently was professionally involved in organizational politics, that our salvation politically as a country rests with our youth. And I do agree with that. And I hope that the voting coming up in a couple of weeks here will be reflective of that. It is important that young people in Highland Park become involved in our city. As the oldest member of the city council now, and if I get reelected, would continue to be, I think that's critical. We have a diverse range of ages on the city council. We have a diverse range of ages in Highland Park. We have programs for different ages, and that's very important. One of the last things I will say about that is that Highland Park has one of the highest rates of return of children who grow up here who choose to come back to live here. And in my opinion, that's reflective of the fact that we must be doing something right overall.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hubler.
So my definition of young people is a little bit different, and I think of my kids. And I think of all the birthday parties that I've gone to in all the other communities except for Highland Park. We don't have places here. We need more businesses. I keep saying experiential businesses, a place where our kids can go play laser tag inside in the winter. We don't have any buildings for that. We have all these empty storefronts. Why are we not recruiting a business to do that? Why are we not recruiting businesses for esports or just name it? Everybody in here I've talked to on the streets here, everywhere, has said all these good ideas of all these businesses that would be so good for our kids. So they could have something to do in Highland Park. And there's a lot of trickle down from that. I mean, if you bring the businesses in, it'll just make our community more vibrant. Our kids will have things to do. They'll be less likely to do things we don't want them to do. We really need to focus on our young families and our young kids. And to really do that, you need representation at city council. I mean, if you don't have anybody at city council who has elementary school kids or middle school kids or high school kids, it's not that you're forgetting about them. You're just not, it's not ingrained in your mind that this is my priority. This is what I live every day. These are the people I think about when I hear the words young kids.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ross?
Thank you. I never forget about K-12 students. I want to start by saying that Mayor Rotary will remember serving as I did on an organization. I guess it was an executive committee of Nova HP. And that was an effort that a 113 school board member tried to do to create a space in downtown Highland Park where students, it was a club that students from surrounding school districts, surrounding schools would come and hang out and learn and, you know, just have a place to go after school. I'm deeply involved in K-12 grade education, well past the time I served on both 112 school board. I serve on both 112 and 113's education foundations, and I find our student reps to be this incredibly smart, frankly, as smart as any adults. And I love that we have student reps, not only to our foundations, but to city council. I think that's, you know, amazing. And I think they have so much to add to the conversation about what vibrancy could look like in Highland Park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stolberg, how would you take into account our young people of Highland Park, Highwood?
So I too had the choice of moving back to Highland Park, and I did. I raised with my wife 3 kids here who are products of Highland Park Elementary, middle, and high school. It is difficult to not think about children when your wife is sitting on the school board. And ultimately was president of that board for a period of time. So children being involved in our community is ingrained in my family's day-to-day life. Whether it's making sure the sidewalks don't have cracks or the streets don't have potholes for someone to fall in, or making sure that we feel that our children are safe on our streets. When I lived here, we used to go right from school to, I'll date myself, we called it Uptown, Highland Park. And places like Chandler's or Chestnut Court or Gazelle's, where we could buy a soda or candy, or just maybe try and put something in our pocket that the shopkeeper never saw. That's not there anymore. I'm kidding about that. But at the end of the day, I do agree that we need experiential uses in Highland Park. But as a council, there is only so much we can do. We have to get our landlords to buy into this. We have to get our brokers to buy into this. We have to get our staff to buy into this. And not every single opportunity that we see in other communities may be right for Highland Park. But when I come to Highland Park, if I were going to buy a house, I'd want to see those kids on skateboards and bikes and rollerblades in downtown Highland Park. That's what excites me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Nichols?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
No.
How would you take into account our young people of Highland Park, Highwood?
Yeah, oh, Jeff, if they had laser tag here, I'd never see my kids again, never. So as a parent of 11-year-old twins in the 5th grade, I think of how my children interact with the city every single day, right? I live over in the Highlands, so I don't have a lot of access to things that I know that other people have talked about putting in the Central Business District. I would never let my children ride all the way over to the Central Business District at age 11. That's not something I would do. So when I think of how I want children to benefit through the structure of Highland Park, is I would love equitable development around the city. You know, we have really great parks. We have a really great park district, and my kids are very involved with the programs that are offered there. We have great upkeep in the parks that are available to our kids to use. And like Adam said, like, I feel confident in my neck of the woods if there's, you know, well-marked streets and my kids are riding around over to their friends' houses, they know how to get there. They can get there without falling in a pothole or getting somebody running a stop sign or something like that. My kids have shown up with me at advocacy events since I started working in policy and advocacy. So my kids are always leading the marches and holding the signs. So if there's ever a problem, we don't have to worry about the kids in Highland Park because they'll tell us about it. One thing I do love is the ability that the city has made for students to serve on these boards and commissions and contribute to that voice in Highland Park. And they have really great ideas, y'all. They have really great ideas. So I think we just have to keep listening to them and making sure that they feel their voices are heard as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this next question goes to Mr. Hugler first. Do you support having bike lanes anywhere on Green Bay Road? And if the vote were taken today, would you vote yes or no?
All right, so I have had a lot of conversations on this topic. I'm sure a lot of other people have. I always start this with my real estate background, which leads me to believe that property rights are important. I don't think there's any reason a bike path should take away property rights, and I commend the city council for making the decision that we will not be widening Green Bay Road. So then that leaves, now we need to talk about what's left. I'm pro bike lanes, but if you look at the map and you've driven that street, which I do every day, and I soon will be driving it again, taking my son back to Edgewood, and that opens in another 4 weeks. We cannot have bike lanes in that section. It's physically impossible without taking out property. And if you try, it's going to be discontinuous, and it's just not what the city wants, and I would vote against it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ross, on having bike lanes on Green Bay Road.
I'm definitely in favor in general, for the concept of bike lanes. I want to, promote more cycling in the community. My husband is one of the most serious cyclists in the city's part of a group called GTE, which stands for Grupo Tu Earlio, because they get up at 5 a.m. and cycle 30 miles and back. But I honestly think that the process around any kind of infrastructure, including bike lanes, needs to involve the community a lot more and much earlier in the process. I mean, there needs to be transparency around discussions of anything that affects our infrastructure. And I attended the meeting Thursday about Green Bay Road and the bike lanes. I heard that the city is not expanding the width of Green Bay Road, and I applaud that. I do think that bike lanes would be great in Highland Park. I think that possibly other streets could use it before Green Bay Road. But I'm still open. I'm trying to remain open to what the city comes back with. But it is from what I hear from cyclists, it's a highly trafficked road and quite dangerous and too many stop signs. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stolper, bike lanes on Green Bay Road.
I can't believe it took 7 questions for that to get. So respectfully, I will answer the question, but I look at the mayor and I feel like I have to make a disclosure here. As a sitting council member, it would not be appropriate for me to divulge in this type of setting my potential vote on an issue that has not fully come before us. Okay. I want to be respectful to both sides of that policy or potential policy decision. That said, I was also here the other night in this very room. I've spoken to many people that I see in this audience. I am proud of the fact that I can attest that our city is not strong-handed in these things. Some ideas came out through engineering that a lot of residents did not approve of. The council and our city staff immediately conveyed to the residents, most of whom were on Green Bay Road and affected by this, that our plans to widen Green Bay Road were not going to happen. We have to make sure, though, that we understand where this came from, and that is from an infrastructure investment and improvement project of almost a little over $15 million that the federal government is going to pay $12.5 million of. As far as bike lanes, I will just say this. I believe in bike lanes. It's not for every street. I believe that if they cannot be contiguous, I question the validity of them. And more than anything, it's got to be safe. So I will respectfully, because it is something that's going to come before our council in a matter of weeks, I will put my official view
Thank you.
in that form.
Okay, Ms. Nichols on bike lanes.
So I was zooming into the meeting the other night too, and I was watching everybody speak about it. And what I felt from watching that meeting was that it feels like this is a big group of people that have big concerns and that they don't feel heard. And when I was out canvassing yesterday on Green Bay Road, every door I went to asked me the question about bike lanes. To be honest, I'm not trying to pass the question, but it's kind of like Adam said too, you realize how much the city has the ability to speak on it versus how much is already in progress and in motion. That money came in for that infrastructure plan in 2015. The road was always going to be fixed. So whether or not it's about the bike lanes is something that sounds like the city has listened to the feedback from the people that are concerned about them and has removed the sort of idea of concrete barriers and the balustrades and things like that and widening in the parkway and taking up people's valuable front yard. And I think that that's important. What I've appreciated in the process is the ability through the council meetings that I've attended and the community meetings that I've attended is watching the interplay between the city and the council. And I would be excited to continue to hear evidence based on one direction or the other with the bike lanes. I think that I want to see more of the information about the data that's being collected and about the information that's happening. I do agree, there's a lot of opportunities to ride bikes here in Highland Park. There's a lot of really safe places to ride them. But if you want to ride a bike to get from place to place, you have to consider the feelings of the people that want to make that choice too. So there's a lot more to discover. So I'm going to keep listening. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Bloomberg on bike lanes?
The question as to how I or any of us will vote on bike lanes, first of all, I agree with Councilmember Stolberg. It would be inappropriate for a sitting member of the city council to answer that question before we have heard everything that's been here about it. But importantly, within this question is how we as a city council deliberate on such issues. And why I am not at a point where I could answer how I would vote. Public opinion is important. An email that came into us recently was, how do you on the council poll public opinion on these issues? How do you know what the majority wants? And the answer is, we don't and we don't. Majority does not rule. Alex de Tocqueville, for those of you who know who that was, cautioned that in a democracy, we must protect against the tyranny of the majority. What does that mean? It means that just because more people are more vocal about something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. In making decisions on the city council, speaking for myself, I'm data driven. I tend not to follow anecdotal evidence so much as information received from experts based on data. That's what I'm looking at. What residents have had to say on both sides of this issue are important. People have raised great issues about safety on both sides of that issue. Bike lanes may improve safety or they may not. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have two more questions before closing. And I just might say that there are so many topics that we're not going to be able to cover. And I hope you'll talk to the candidates after this forum. This next question is about Airbnbs and other short-term rentals in Highland Park. And I just would like, the writer would like to know what your thoughts are about the future of those things in Highland Park. And we start with Ms. Ross.
I added a jotting notes as this goes on. And I wanted to say that with all due respect to everyone on the table, at this table and in the room, I think that discussions about anything, infrastructure or otherwise, if the city starts looking at a project or a policy that as soon as they start looking at it, that there needs to be community engagement around it, not years later. We need that level of transparency and certainly with regards to infrastructure. Regarding Airbnbs, it's very interesting because I was out canvassing and knocked on somebody's door who was across from an Airbnb, and it's been extremely concerning to her. And I said to her, if I get to council, it is an issue that I would like to tackle, just in terms, I know it's legal to do, to have an Airbnb, but the impact on neighbors, for actual homeowners, is something deeply concerning to me. And I don't want, community members stressed out about, short-term rental inhabitants of houses. Thank you.
Okay, the next person is Mr. Stolberg, and your thoughts on Airbnbs and short-term rentals in Highland Park.
Thanks. So I deal with this every day in my real job. But it's very different in a condominium association where they have rules and their declarations and bylaws prohibit short-term rentals. We have something concrete that every owner who bought into the community agreed to, and we can rely on it, and we can forcefully, legally enforce it if need be. This is something that has come before our council before, and honestly, it's a difficult one. I am a huge proponent of not infringing on homeowners' property rights. You buy a house, you pay a mortgage and your real estate taxes, as inexpensive as those taxes are in Highland Park, you still pay them, okay? You put the money into maintaining your house, upkeep, insurance, whatever it is. But we have to balance that with the greater good of the public safety for everybody around you. So in terms of my approach on Airbnb, I don't know that I would be in favor of banning it, but there are ways that we can require certain things, registration, minimum timeframes, maximum amount of rentals per year. There are, as Councilmember Bloomberg said, data is very important to us. We've looked at what other communities have done successfully, unsuccessfully. And I think it's something that we will continue to explore. But as I said, and I think Mr. Hubler said, we have to be very careful not to infringe on a homeowner's right to do what they want with their property while still balancing public safety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nichols?
What Adam said. No, I'm just kidding. It was perfect. I loved it. No, I am in full agreement of not being able to sort of like, if I am a homeowner and I'm doing something in my home that isn't harming other people, then I should be allowed to do it in my home, right? But that boundary is, if it is harming other people, if it is harming my property value or my access to my driveway or my kids sleeping through the night because someone's holding a rager until 2 a.m, right? So listen, Adam, I told you 7 times. No. So I think it's something that is definitely, again, worth continuing to collect the data on. And also, I feel like part of what, and Yumi was talking about this too, part of what's critical when we talk about city government, right, is that people should be able to feel heard and people should be able to come if they have a problem, right? So if you have a problem because there's a person in your community that is doing something that is not okay with you, and you think there might be a way to limit it, like Adam said, create boundaries for the amount of people that can rent a space in a year, or the amount of, people that can park in a driveway, whatever we have control over as the city, which I would want to know more about. It's important to listen to a person's concerns and to really fully understand where they're coming from and how you can fix them, and whether it's under your purview to fix them, So I think it's something that you have to consider. I think it's something you have to keep talking about with people that are impacted by it. And I don't think you can make a blanket statement about it without finding out more information. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bloomberg on Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
So my record in response to this issue is clear. We've addressed this in the city council, and I'm uncomfortable with Airbnbs. Well, let's talk about rights. I'm an attorney, so I deal with the issue of rights every day. Rights run 2 ways. There is the right to use your property as you would like to use it, but your neighbor has a right of what's called quiet enjoyment of their property. If we allow Airbnbs as we do, how do we regulate them? That puts a burden on the city, that adds expenses to the city. Are you complying with the limited amount of use that an Airbnb is currently permitted to occupy in the city of Highland Park? What happens when that impacts your neighbor? And we have issues where this has come up. It becomes very difficult to enforce. We don't want to send an enforcement army out into the city to make sure everybody is complying with the limited periods of use But then we put a burden on a neighbor to have to report somebody who may or may not be abusing the limited right. So ultimately, in the end, I find the idea of Airbnb to be somewhat inconsistent with what our expectations are in Highland Park. It may impair somebody's right to use their property as they like, but the balance for me is the right of all of the surrounding neighbors and the neighborhood to their quiet enjoyment.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hubler, you have the last response on Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
I think Tony actually said something really important there, and it's the balance. The one thing you can't do is not have rules. Otherwise, you just do whatever. We really need rules for this. And I'm not gonna say I know all the rules, but I can tell you Chicago has gone through this in great detail. Like Adam talked about, a lot of the condo associations are able to handle it. But Chicago originally had a law, which they changed, which I actually think they changed for the worse. They had a very strict rule on Airbnbs where it was only in certain zoning, so non-residential, where you could have it. And so maybe somebody on Green Bay Road, since we've been talking about that topic, where it's a busier street, might be zoned a certain way to have it, or might not, just an example. But when it comes to money, Chicago taxes Airbnbs at, I believe it's 23.4%. We wouldn't be paying extra to have Airbnbs. We could make some money off of that, which would cover the cost of enforcement. So I don't think the cost is an issue, but in a lot of ways, it's almost makes it less likely that people will do Airbnbs. If you can stay at a hotel and pay a normal hotel tax, or you can go over here and pay 23% or 30%, throw a 10% tax on it. Bottom line is you retain the homeowner's rights and you put the rules in place of how you can remove that. In Chicago, was a vacation rental license. So you have the rules in place to get rid of it, and maybe you make some money along the way for the good operators who stay in business, who actually have the rules in place and have good tenants that are maybe just going to a Ravinia show and need a place to stay.
Okay, now we're on to our last question, and we'll start with Mr. Stolberg first. What is the most important environmental issue faced in Highland Park?
I don't know that I would call it a single issue, but balancing the ability to be environmentally conscious without making the impact to do so burdensome on our local businesses and our homeowners. I liked hearing Jeff when he talked about a carbon neutral footprint. I think that's difficult to do, but I think we are working towards ways to take steps in that direction. Quite honestly, the sustainability platform is not my strength on the city council. I will be very honest and tell you I have not had that much involvement in it, but in the areas that come before me, I have tried to balance moving towards sustainability, economic friendly, environmentally friendly policies. One example is we're talking about new construction, and in new construction requiring developers to build EV charging stations for their homeowners, rather than looking at it as a retrofit, but doing it right off the bat. Is that a public benefit? Are they entitled to get certain provisions for that? So I think that we have done things in that direction already. Councilman Bloomberg talked about banning coal tar. We actually had the lawyer, I believe, for the National Coal Tar Association show up to our council meeting to tell us why we should not be doing that. I was not aware that such an organization existed.
All right, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, Ms. Nichols, what's the most important environmental issue facing Highland Park?
Well, as I spoke about before, environmental issues overarch and overlap every part of Highland Park and every part of the future that we need to live with. Adam talked about that EV charging bill. I actually worked on passing that bill at the state level. So we need to know what we can do at the city level to put everything we can through an environmental framework. Like I said, when we consider infrastructure projects, I was pleased to see that when the city considers developments, they consider how they approach variances and what property owners ask for in terms of what the environmental impact will be of putting another building somewhere. Creating more non-permeable pavers that create more runoff and create more flooding in my neighborhood and others. So I think everything that we look at has to be through an environmental lens, because in the long run, if we do it right and we do it proactively and transparently as a city, it can save us money. Like those EV chargers Adam was talking about, like energy efficiency programs that are already offered, like composting programs that allow us to, you know, be able to get less food waste into the landfills. All of the things that we do have to be looked at through that lens, because we are coming down the pike towards something that is coming right at our faces and is very serious. We are on the edge of one of the nicest bodies of fresh water around. And we want to make sure that we keep everything safe, sustainable, and thriving here so that we can live the long haul in our city, because it's really, really critical to take care of that part. And she's going to get a workout with that stop sign, because I could go all day about this, but I guarantee you that if I'm on city council, I will work as hard as I can to do everything through an environmental lens. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the most, Mr. Bloomberg, the most important environmental issue facing Highland Park?
The most important environmental issue facing Highland Park is climate change. It is here. We see this with extreme flooding at times, beyond what was here in my youth, beyond what was here when I was in high school, beyond what was here when I moved back 30 plus years ago. It's going to affect us in a lot of different ways, great and small. We see that the park district can't maintain ice sheets all winter long because our winters are more moderate. That may feel nice, but we don't get to go ice skating with any kind of consistency. The issue of climate change affects every decision that we make or may come through the city of Highland Park. It is not merely that we must be leaders on sustainability issues. It's that we must remember that we are already having to deal with the consequences of climate change and adapt whatever it is that we decide to do to accommodate the changes and impacts that have on our environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Uber, environmental issues.
I said when discussing my first response about the environment that we need a strategic plan, which gets us to be carbon neutral in Highland Park by 2035. I talked about some of the ways to do that, but let me tell you about what we're doing. Right now, we have what we call our sustainability plan, which is expired, but we're renewing it. We're going to be working on that again, I think. And we set a goal in that plan. And the goal was between 2020 and 2025, we will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 5% or 1% per year. 1% per year. That's 100 years. That's our goal. That's not good enough. We all sit up here and we say, we need to fight it. We need to do this. We need to do that. We'll throw spaghetti against the wall. We'll tackle every little piece. We'll do this. We need a strategic plan to get to carbon neutral. The engineering is there. We are so fortunate. The cost of solar panels have dropped 90% in the last 10 years. I have solar panels on my house. Yumi talked about having solar panels on hers. You know, they're 20% more efficient than they were. EVs are on price parity with internal combustion engines, and they're going to be much cheaper in a couple of years. Wind farms, battery storage, heat pumps are now as efficient as our natural gas furnaces. The city needs to help the community understand these things, and we have to set the goal and figure out how to get there to be carbon neutral by 2035.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Ross, environmental issues facing Highland Park.
That's the hazard of going toward the end with one's answer. You'll have to take my word for it, but I wrote the same thing down. That Tony said about the climate change is the number one environmental issue that the city of Highland Park faces, and for that matter, every city faces this. But what do we do about it? The city is already doing really good work on it with the sustainability plan. The fact that, it did the climate hazard assessment, which is very concerning to read. We know that we're at risk, of flooding. We know this is going to add to the cost of running the city. We know that there are just going to be, financial costs to this. But what we need to do, in addition to what the city is doing, is we need to educate our citizens about what is available, to do. Things are available to make them, more sustainable at home. As Jeff just mentioned, we're walking the walk at our house with solar panels, a full solar array, as well as solar hot water panels. Our energy bill is next to nothing. And I want to say it's good. What's good for our planet is really good for our budget. So, okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to go to closing statements of 1 minute each. And we start with Ms. Nichols for her statement.
I wanted to thank the league again and everybody who came today. I think it's really great that we're here talking about all this stuff, and it's exciting to see people that care. I would love to see people coming to the Sustainability Advisory Group and contributing to that sustainability plan, because it's always an option for everyone to be a part of that process. So feel free to join us. We're excited to have you. Highland Park's incredible, but I want to be a part of making it even better. I want to work towards increased vibrancy and support for local businesses. Safety and connection to community is critical to me. Resilience against the worst impacts of climate change, and maintaining the high level of services we have in Highland Park while staying within budget and being fiscally responsible. I can do all of that because I'm good at collaborating, communicating, connecting with people, and listening to ideas. I have a track record of successful initiatives at the state and federal level with policy. I'm smart, capable, and focused on finding the right person or solution for a problem. I show up, I'm prepared, and I work until the problem is solved. I hope that I can count on your vote in this election. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stolberg, your closing statement.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone for coming out today. A lot of people have had some good questions, and I want to let you guys know, whether I'm on the city council or not, I don't ever remember seeing a council chambers filled with this many people. We're here for you. It's up to you guys. If you have questions, if you have concerns, come out, voice them. We have opportunities for everybody to be heard at every council meeting. So in closing, I'd just like to say I'm committed and excited to be a dedicated member of your city council, hopefully for the next 4 years. The last 4 years have not been easy in the face of a global pandemic and an unspeakable tragedy. We have stayed focused, committed, and worked diligently to make Highland Park a better, safer place to live, work, and play. I will continue to be a voice of fiscal responsibility with your tax dollars, strive to bring responsible development to Highland Park that includes housing for those most in need. I will continue to implement sustainable practices into our city code, work with all stakeholders to ensure collaboration, transparency, and inclusivity, and prioritize our community vibrancy through working with and helping existing businesses, and by finding new and uniquely creative ways to attract new ones to our great city. I thank you for your support, and I look for your vote on April 4th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ross, your closing statement.
Thank you to the league for hosting us. And thank you to everyone who came today. My name is Yumi Ross. Please look for Yumi. They're on the ballot. With long service in every area of our community, I'm strong in all aspects that the city needs. I'm committed to revitalization, to attracting new businesses, and to better urban design. I will advocate for more transparency around city projects, and more listening and engagement with residents. I'm a longtime advocate for the environment. I worked on the Global Warming Awareness Project and was a featured speaker at the United Nations, as I mentioned. And our family walks the walk. Through my many years of service, I have met and worked alongside hundreds of our fellow Highland Parkers. And in the past couple of months, I've met hundreds more in every part of town. Highland Park is a rich tapestry of talent and diversity. It is time to harness these great assets. If elected to council, I will be a great listener, interested in everyone's point of view. I will advocate for all voices to be heard, and I will bring a holistic approach to governance. I bring good judgment, perspective, and experience throughout Highland Park. Again, my name is Yumi Ross. Please look for Yumi there on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoopler, your closing statement.
Highland Park needs change. We need representation from the entire community, and we need fresh ideas. Every voter needs to look at each person who's currently on the city council, along with the mayor, and think about what their strengths are. What demographics do they represent? What experiences do they offer? then the voters need to look at the five of us and ask which of these candidates would bring innovative ideas, unique experiences, different demographics. What strengths do all the candidates have that we don't currently have? How will they complement our current city council and the mayor? We need a city council that is inclusive and representative of our entire city. So vote for the candidates you believe that will bring that fresh edge and perspective to our city council. And if anyone wants to learn more about me and my ideas, you can join me every Sunday night. We do an open house at Ravinia Brewing Company from 5 to 7. I'll answer all your questions and really get into some of the specifics of my plans on how I would revitalize businesses. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the candidates, and thank you to the voters of Highland Park for caring. And remember, Hoobler means business and Hoobler means change.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bloomberg has the final closing statement.
The job of the city council is to make policy in the city of Highland Park. The agenda is set by the mayor and the city manager. It's our job to vote. How we vote is based on how we view a particular matter that comes before us. That's all our job is. So you've heard that I'm data-driven, that I rely on experts, and that I process the discussions and arguments with my fellow council members before I vote. That's representative government. I'd like to thank all of you for voting for me in past elections. It's been an honor to represent you. I was deeply affected by the events on July 4th, and as a result, I decided to run again and offer my services to maintain stability for the city council going ahead. I'm the first on the ballot. It's a random selection, and after running 3 previous times, I finally got the first place. I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
All right, I'd just like to note that there are 5 candidates running for 3 openings on the City of Highland Park Council. So you have good choices here. I want to thank you to the candidates for the City of Highland Park Council member and to the League of Women Voters of Highland Park Highwood for sponsoring this forum. Remember to cast your ballot on Election Day, April 4th, or request a vote by mail ballot, or vote early at Lake County Clerk's Office, March 10th through 7th, or at the expanded locations, March 20th through April 3rd. A voter's guide for the April 4th election is available on the League of Women Voters of Highland Park Highwood website. And this form has been recorded and will be available on their website and on the League of Women Voters of Illinois voter guide. Thank you again to the League, to the candidates for participating, and to the audience for attending. And I hope you enjoy the remainder of your day.